Hi folks, Will from MinIO here, and in this video we're going to be talking about the event structure for MinIO. This largely mirrors the AWS event structure because MinIO does try to implement the entire AWS API for you. But there are some significant changes. We're going to get into all of that. In our video today, we're going to be looking at a few different topics. We're going to start with bucket and object events so you can see what's going on in the system, the types of events that you can look for. And then we're going to talk about event destinations and event notifications. And those are the two pieces that you need to actually start working with events. And finally, we're going to show you how you can set up a custom webhook that you can use to read any event and process it in any way that you want. Those of you who are joining us for the first time, let's talk a little bit about what you can expect to do. At the end of this video, you should be able to register an event destination. You'll also be able to subscribe to an event notification on a bucket. And last, we're going to show you how to deploy a custom Python-based webhook. So let's go ahead and jump right in with our bucket and object events. The S3 event framework is what we're going to be working with here. So we support most S3 event notifications. There are some exceptions because MinIO is not AWS. One of the biggest ones is ACL notifications. We do not have any access control list events in MinIO, and this is because MinIO doesn't use access control lists for any kind of authorization, so there's no events to report. MinIO has also implemented a couple different event types that are not part of the S3 standard. So in addition to not having all of the events that S3 have, we have a few extras. And you'll see those, they're actually very useful. We have some really good documentation there on all of the event types that you might want to look at. So let's jump right in and look at some of these events. We'll start off with our lifecycle management events. So MinIO can trigger notifications when an object is transitioned. Whether or not that actually completed, that's an excellent thing to keep track of. If an object transition fails, you're going to want to know about it. If the object is being restored for some reason, you want to track the restorations, you can take a look at that. We have a post and a completed for object restores. Also, and this is important for all events, wildcards are also supported. So if I want to look for all the transitions or all the restore events, I can just do an S3 object transition star and get all of those events. So it's a very powerful tool there. Another important task that your MinIO server does is replication between buckets or between sites. And you want to be able to track this, right? This can be a very important use of event reporting. And so MinIO supports a few different events for replication. We have an operation completed and we have an operation failed. Obviously, failed is probably the one you're going to want to look for. There's also a couple here, operation missed threshold and operation replicated after threshold. The threshold for replication is usually set around 15 minutes or so. If that replication hasn't happened, we want to make sure that the missed threshold, we get an alert or something along those lines. We want to watch for that. Finally, we have this operation not tracked. And that's going to occur if an object that's supposed to be replicated stops being tracked by our replication service. And the reason why that might happen is if your second site has gone offline or your other bucket has gone offline for long enough, we're not going to keep trying to replicate something when we know the other bucket isn't there. So when that stops, when that operation stops being tracked, that's when you'll see that sort of notification. Also, by the way, just keep in mind, you can also do wildcards on this. So if I'm looking for all of the replication events, if I have a service that I want to track all my replication events on, I can check on that S3 replication star. Most commonly, though, a lot of folks are going to be looking at objects and seeing what happens with the objects. There are three categories of object events. There are accessed, created, and removed. Okay? For access, get legal hold, get retention, and head. Okay? Those are all pretty self-explanatory. It's when you're getting an object. If somebody tries to retrieve an object, you'll see that get. If somebody is getting the legal hold or getting the retention settings on an object, you'll see those. And the head, that's really where you're going to get the header of the response that's coming back down. You're going to make sure that you see that. Okay, so that's all stuff that you're going to do when somebody is trying to read an object. What about when somebody's trying to write an object? Well, there's a lot of different parts to this. If I'm doing large objects, then one of the ones that I may want to look at regularly is complete multi-part upload. That makes sure that I've got everything, all the parts. So if I'm doing a multi-part upload, I want to make sure all the parts have been reported. I could watch that particular event. Also, if I'm copying an object, if I'm posting or putting an object, those are things that I want to take a look at. If I'm making a change to an object, that is deleting some tags or putting some tags on it or setting a legal hold or setting a retention rule. All of that stuff I can watch on these object created events. Again, I can do wildcards with these. By the way, there's a post and a put here, and a lot of folks are like, well, wait a minute, why am I doing a post and a put? At the end of the day, I'm putting something on my MinIO server, so what happens there? Well, with a post, that's going to be requiring authentication, whereas a put you can use with a pre-signed URL. So if I'm doing a lot of pre-signed URL work, I want to make sure those are all working. I would check on put more than post. Objects being removed, being deleted. As you can see here, we've got object removed delete. That's if I'm going to delete a specific version, if I have versioning enabled. Or if it's just an object that's out there without versioning enabled, I will see those deletes. If I have versioning enabled and I delete an object and I create a delete marker rather than actually deleting the object, you can see that as well. So I can watch for actual deletes or I can watch for creation of delete markers. So that's really great. In all cases, don't forget you have wildcards available to you for access, create, and remove. So a couple of different event types that are not part of the S3 standard. All those that we talked about before, those are S3 standard events. But a couple of events that we have here are not part of that. We have S3 scanner. And the scanner is going to trigger on one of two things. The many versions is going to trigger on an object that has more than 1,000 versions. And big prefix is if I have more than 50,000 subfolders in a particular bucket. Now, these are things that you would watch for if you have maybe something going on in your system. You don't understand what's going on, or you've got too many versions, or you want to clean up some stuff that's been around for a while. This is all stuff that you would do with this scanner. And these scanner events, as they happen, as the scanner goes through and it sees these things, you will have these events triggered. So if I have an object that has 1,000 versions, it's not going to trigger the minute that 1,000th version is created. It's going to trigger when the scanner runs through and says, oh, wait, this has more than 1,000 versions. I need to throw an event out there. So the other part of that is that if I have more than 1,000 versions, I will keep getting that many versions trigger every single time it comes through and sees that there's more than 1,000 versions of an object. Same with the big prefix. Okay? So just keep that in mind. You can watch these on any bucket as well. Also, these can be watched at a site-wide level. So this is one of the interesting things. Scanner events can also be watched site-wide. So any bucket in your system that has more than 1,000 versions or has more than 50,000 prefixes in it will trigger these events. Okay, we'll show you how to watch for those in just a minute. But these events are not compatible with AWS S3. So if I'm using AWS 3 as well as MinIO for whatever reason, I can only watch these on my MinIO servers. Okay, these are MinIO only. Another MinIO only one is bucket events. This is also another site-wide event. We have S3 bucket created, S3 bucket removed. Now, this allows us to watch if a bucket is obviously created or removed, and this is part of the entire site-wide system. So this would be another thing that gets watched as a site level, not on a bucket level. Bucket events, also not part of the AWS S3 standard. So why do we have scanner events, bucket events? These are some things that you just may want to be looking for. And also with our bucket events, we use the bucket events internally regularly when we're doing things like mirroring, okay, to make sure that we are doing bucket created, bucket removed. We see these triggers, we see these copies happening and things of that nature. So bucket and scanner, not only are they not part of AWS 3, they can be set up as site-wide watches. So that's just something to keep in mind with the bucket and the scanner events. Now, some of you may be asking, well, if these aren't part of S3, why do they all start S3? Wildcards. If I want to watch every event that's coming through, S3 star. Okay, that'll give me all the bucket events, all the scanner events, all the access, all the created, all the removed for the objects. It will also give me all the ILM and all of the replication events. So I can see all the events. It's very easy to see all the events with that S3 star. Thanks for joining us on this discussion of events. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you'd like to reach out with us, you can use any of the methods you see here on the screen. You can also chat with us interactively on slack.min.io, or you can just leave a response here on the video. Thank you, and we'll see you for the next one.